What's up, and welcome back to another episode of the Still Curtain Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Jaggi, editor of StillCurtain.com, and joining me, as always, is Still Curtain contributor and co-host of the Still Curtain Podcast, Shayne Kubas. We are on the cusp of the NFL schedule release. Whether you like it, you hate it, it grinds your gears, or you're excited to see what's happening, we're going to break down all of the Steelers' schedule leaks so far that we know about. And we're going to talk about a really big one, too, that may have some Aaron Rodgers implications here, maybe, Shayne.
Maybe.
So let's dive into this. And I want to, again, this show, we're going to keep it pretty schedule release centric because this is the big news happening right now.
Right.
We will have time this offseason, I promise you, to go back. We're going to dissect the rookies. We're going to break down the roster in general with the wide receiver room, all that kind of stuff. So we're just pushing it to the back burner for now. We're going to get there. If you'd missed Shayne and Josh's show from last week, check that out too, because they did a really good job breaking down next year's quarterbacks. And I found that very intriguing as well. Josh bringing his dynamic of just being the expert in all things college football. And then Shayne, you obviously watch a ton of college football as well. So those are very potential Steelers prospects next year's draft. But for now, let's talk about the NFL schedule release happening tonight as we record this podcast on Wednesday afternoon here. What we know about so far, Shayne, and basically the NFL likes to tease us. They like to slow release these big primetime games. We know that the Eagles and Cowboys are going to be kicking off in the NFL season opener, which is kind of odd because it's a weird game because the Cowboys have blown out their opponents the last 2 years in the season opener, 73-17 over the last two seasons, but they also got smashed twice against the Eagles last year, and the Eagles are just a better team. So I don't know what kind of game that's going to offer, but that'll be the first game on the slate, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of eyes tuning in to catch football again, Shayne. But the big takeaway that I have so far, we have confirmation of this now with the 3 games being released. The Steelers don't play Christmas Day this year. And I think for a lot of us, family folk especially, we can be thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, I almost went to the game last year, but I ended up having some. Yeah, I remember I ended up having some stuff I was going to do with some family in town. But yeah, like I thought about going to the game because I'm like, well, Steelers, I mean, might as well do something with that. But no, I think in general, for those who, especially those who have families or people in your life who would like to see you on Christmas and not watch the Steelers, if you're in that situation, I'm sure everyone's kind of happy with that. But it also is just, I don't love the idea of playing on Christmas Day. Like, I know the players are in the season and they might not be like with their families all the time anyway, but like, let's let them enjoy Christmas if we can, right? Like that's my stance on it. But
yeah, and Shayne, needless to say, the NFL does not have the media in mind when they construct these dates.
No, they certainly don't care. Yeah.
But no, I mean, holidays are obviously a big time for football watching. I know Dallas this year, they have the Thanksgiving game and they've got Christmas. And so it could be worse in terms of that. But a lot of people will tune in anyway. I'll probably tune in anyway, just more casually, and I can kind of be with my kids in the meantime. Any other big news, like just around the league in terms of games that you've got your eye on or anything, Shayne? I know we haven't had a ton of time to dissect this because it all just started happening this morning, and then we're going to get into the Steelers schedule specific.
Yeah, I mean, not specifically. I'm curious to see kind of how the end of the season is handled this year, because if we remember last year, the Steelers, which so far doesn't look like this is going to be the case, but I don't want to jinx them. Like, we're not going to have like the 6 divisional games in a row feeling like nearly that way. Like, I want to see if they kind of shy away from that more this year after trying it last year with like the Steelers and the Bears, or are they going to kind of make it a little bit more like balanced and things like that? So that's what I'm curious about as we kind of get the full release later tonight. So.
Oh yeah, last year's gauntlet in December was absolutely brutal. They had 5 games in December last year. 3 of them came in a 10-day stretch, and then they go, and after playing on the road in Philadelphia, on the road at Baltimore, which are 2 of the hardest games you could possibly get.
Yeah.
Then they go in 4-day turnaround, play the Chiefs on Christmas Day. Like, there was no chance ever they were going to win that game, and they lost 29-10. Like, it's just 3 straight blowouts. I mean, they were miserable down the stretch. Fortunately, they shouldn't have that difficult of a stretch this year with not having that Christmas Day games. We have to see yet where some of these games are going to come in. But we're going to share everything that we have so far. And if anything drops while we're doing this pod, we will also share that as well. So let's start right at the top of the list here, Shayne, with the biggest schedule leak so far, and it's going to be for obvious reasons. Once we say this, the Steelers will face the Jets in New York in week 1. Now, why is this big? We don't have to think very long and hard. Justin Fields is the quarterback of the Jets, and who has been the name lingering around the Pittsburgh Steelers since early in the offseason as their potential quarterback for the 2025 season is Aaron Rodgers. Shayne, does this schedule leak, this official schedule leak now, mean that Rodgers is coming to Pittsburgh, or did the NFL do this hoping that Rodgers was going to come to Pittsburgh and they get the perfect drama battle where now Fields and Rodgers are both on the opposite sidelines?
I think that could be part of it, but I also don't think it necessarily means much of anything. I think the problem with this at this point, and we'll get into this more at the end of the show and as we move along if this doesn't happen soon, but if you read kind of the tea leaves recently, at least in my opinion, like the chances that he is the starting Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback of this team, the numbers are getting lower odds wise, in my opinion. Like it doesn't seem like it's trending towards like definitely happening, which again, I'll save more for the end, but like, I don't know if the schedule necessarily is going to sway me to think that, oh, this definitely means they know something or that they're hoping or expecting this to happen. I think it's just an interesting, matchup between two teams that obviously one quarterbacks could come into factor here in terms of where they played last year. And also just two teams that are kind of going in different directions at this point. Like the Jets are clearly trying to rebuild things offensively. Steelers are trying to retool things offensively. Like we'll see kind of how those two match up in week 1.
Yeah, and if nothing else, Shayne, we're definitely getting that Justin Fields revenge game. Like, and this guy has a reason to be bitter. I mean, he got benched.
Unfortunately, yeah.
After 6 weeks, he led the Steelers to a 4-2 record. He had 10 total touchdowns, 1 interception. Again, small samples. We're talking about 6-game sample size. That's a 10-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. If you want to look at it that way, he was executing Tomlin's conservative game plan. He was moving the chains, and the Steelers were winning football games. Heck, he should have been 5-1 if George Pickens didn't quit on the Cowboys, and if he would have had a little bit more help on Sunday Night Football in the 90-minute of rain delays. Like, if he started 5-1, we've had the discussion: would he have gotten benched, or would Tomlin would have said, "Anyway, I'm benching you because Wilson's the guy I promised the job to"? Whatever the case, Justin Fields has a reason to be angry. He's got a reason to seek revenge against Mike Tomlin and the Steelers. Tomlin, who apparently went over the heads of everybody else and said, "This is my call. I'm making the move to bench Fields for Russell Wilson." And now he goes and joins Aaron Glenn, who actually believes in him and is going to give him every opportunity to be that guy for New York, at least for now. And I expect him to try to put on a clinic against his former team in week 1.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think realistically, like the Jets offense is an offense that if Fields can kind of just run the show to a certain degree and do some of the easy stuff better than he has in the past, like similar to what he did with the Steelers, right? If he can make the easy passes, make smart reads early on, that offense has a good amount of juice, like especially with Garrett Wilson being there. They add in guys over the offseason. Breece Hall, I'm hoping for their sake, is going to be a better version of himself this year. I think that'll help the run game a lot. He should be helped by Fields' presence in the run game too. Like, that's a real offense. If Membu at right tackle, especially the rookie, can play well, Fashanu at the tackle spots, like that offense might give teams some problems if Fields can just run it efficiently. So.
And Shayne, I'm interested to see where the line comes in for this game if Aaron Rodgers does not sign with the Steelers, and you're looking at Mason Rudolph against Justin Fields, because I would give the quarterback edge, obviously, to the New York Jets at that point. And if the Jets are wise, they're going to play to Justin Fields' strengths, something the Steelers didn't do a particularly good job at last year, knowing that his legs are his asset, like use them. And so it'll be interesting to see how that is used. But that Steelers versus Jets game, that is going to come with a lot of intrigue, not just with these fan bases, but around the league if Rodgers signs, because people are going to say, all right, we want to see what these guys look like now that they've essentially swapped jerseys. Can they get the most out of them now? And it'll be interesting to see, do both improve? Do both show nothing? Like, I don't know. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers a little bit later here and what our chances are coming to Pittsburgh, if it's a good idea or not. But let's move on to the next schedule leak for now, Shayne. That is week 2. And we're talking another revenge game here. The Steelers will be at their home opener against the Seattle Seahawks. And DK Metcalf will be looking for reasons to stick it to his old team and let them know that they made a mistake trading him to Pittsburgh. What do you make of getting the Seahawks game this early in the season?
I think it's good for the Steelers to get them early because this Seahawks team is very interesting to me in the way that they're constructed now, where you obviously trade away DK Metcalf, you trade away Geno Smith, which I genuinely don't like that much. I do think that Smith was a much better quarterback than even what Sam Darnold could be for them personally. But I also understand the direction they're trying to move in, right, where they're trying to kind of get out of this like 9-8, 10-7 rut that they've been in under Smith, which, hey, if anyone's used to that, Steelers know what that's about, so we can't say anything. But they're trying to move in a different direction, and I think early in the season is when you might see this team not be quite so good. I do think there's a chance they're still very competitive down the stretch. I think that they could be still in like the mix at the end of the year, potentially as a playoff team, if Darnold plays really well, right? But early on, I do think there's going to be some hiccups trying to figure out, okay, like how good is Sam Darnold going to be? How are we going to handle the distribution of the passing game with a lot of guys who are more kind of slot weapons or after the catch weapons, not so much deep threats? You know, there's this offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks. Was Zabel being brought in? Is it all of a sudden actually good in the interior? All good questions for a team that has a lot of them. Can the Steelers take advantage of a team that's kind of learning themselves early on in the season and get revenge for Metcalf if he considers it revenge?
Yeah, I mean, if you're hoping that the Steelers can come away with a win early in the season, this is a great time to get Seattle. They'll obviously be traveling from West Coast to East Coast right after getting acclimated to taking all those hits again after week 1. And we just know the history of teams traveling from one side of the country to the other, particularly when you're losing time going across time zones the way Seattle is. They typically don't play very well in those games. But I don't think we've seen the time yet for that game. Have we seen the time? If it's a 1 o'clock game, Seattle's in trouble because those are so brutal. So, but I think even not just that factor, Shayne, but the fact that Sam Darnold's only going to be in his second game with the team. They're going to be figuring things out on offense, in life, post DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, how things are going to operate there. Still have some respectable receivers now with JSN and Cooper Kupp, but it's just a different dynamic now in Seattle, and I'm sure they're going to need several weeks to get acclimated. So if you are to play this team, if they end up being a pretty good team, you're best off to get them early in the year. And so if I had to just say right now, my way too early prediction, I would chalk that one up as a win for Pittsburgh in that home opener there.
Absolutely. Real quick, Tommy, before we jump, because we might not talk about this team at all, depending on if we get any more leaks about the schedule. The Ravens just extended Derrick Henry for 2 years, $30 million.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're hitching their wagon to him even beyond this season, which honestly, with Henry, just as a side note, till the wheels fall off, I guess, riding that train, because clearly it didn't fall off last year, and I'm not going to bet on it happening until it does. So go for it, I guess.
He has already defied every odd imaginable. I mean, we talk about running back shelf life before, and there are studies done that 26 is typically when running backs hit their peak and things start to decline from there. Not for Derrick Henry. I mean,
he's a little different, admittedly. Built a little differently.
Hall of Fame running back, maybe the last Hall of Fame running back. It depends. I mean, the standard's going to change. It's got to change.
The standard will change, but I think traditional Hall of Fame running back. He might be the last one numbers wise, but we'll see.
It might be. It might be. The league is changing a lot in that regard. Good for him though. It's going to be a nightmare again for the Steelers and their run defense probably. Let's move on, Shayne. We'll talk week 4 now, and that is the Steelers versus the Vikings. This is the one that has been rumored for a little while. The Steelers could be getting the Vikings in that international game, but it is confirmed now the Steelers will be the home team, even though they'll be across the pond over there, 7,000 miles away. They'll be the home team against the Minnesota Vikings in Dublin, Ireland, which is where the Rooney family is from. Should be an interesting game. If you haven't watched the hype video yet, and that was kind of fun. That kind of got me excited a little bit. So that's circulating around social media. Was the NFL UK and Ireland account released that? I wrote an article on it, so you can find it on stillcurtain.com. But that kind of got me pumped up a little bit for this game. We haven't watched an international game period for the Steelers since 2013. It's been well over a decade now.
Yeah.
And the last time that they played in Ireland was in 1997. Shit, were you born back then?
That was the year I was born, Tommy. So I was not watching the game.
Child.
Right? Yeah.
Oh man, you missed out on a boring era of Steelers football.
Well, I did. I kind of skipped all the hard parts and like got to just watch the 2000s mostly. So.
No, that it should be interesting though, because we don't see these games very often. I have a feeling they're going to be happening a lot more after the new collective bargaining agreement. I think we're going to be getting to the point where maybe every team's playing 2 international games a year, and then maybe even 1 fewer preseason game. That's direction it seems to be heading at this point. But should be an interesting game. That one you're going to have to tune in early if you want to catch it. 9:30 Eastern time is when that will be kicking off, and it should be interesting to see how that game is. I gotta be honest, I'm not a fan of the broadcast crew for the NFL Network games.
Listen, I love Rich.
It's not Rich Eisen's thing. I don't.
I love Rich very much. He's one of my favorites, but yeah, it's not exactly his forte. I mean, it doesn't help. He does a game a year. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So like it's sometimes it's a tough listen, but you know, you got to give them credit. They got to go out there and do it. But yeah, it'll be a fun watch no matter what. Yeah.
Ironically, Shayne, the last time the Steelers did play internationally, it was against the Vikings in a 28-24 loss in London in 2013. And then the last time they played the Vikings period in the regular season, they got massacred. This was Ben Roethlisberger. They were down 29-0 on the road in Minnesota. And it was just a bloodbath. The Steelers ended up salvaging the score, but it was never a close game.
Wasn't that the Chase Claypool game where like he didn't like where he like messed up and didn't give the ball to the ref or something like that? Was that one?
Yeah, I think that might have been that. I remember where I was watching the game, and I remember I was
like, what is he doing?
And that was ironically like that was the right after the following offseason, Tomlin goes out and signs Mason Cole because he's like, hey, I remember you guys destroyed us, so you must be good.
Us, yeah.
So yeah, that's their logic sometimes when it comes to that kind of stuff. But so yeah, hoping for better results this time around, obviously, and it should be an interesting game there. They get that morning game for the first time in a long time. All right, Shayne, moving on to week 7 now, and the first really big game that has been leaked so far is a Thursday night football game. Steelers at the Cincinnati Bengals. We can expect them to be playing against Joe Burrow and company. This is a team who I think is going to be much tougher this year, although there's still major question marks surrounding that defense, like specifically their defensive line. The Trey Hendrickson situation is a nightmare right now that they're dealing with. They just refuse to pay this guy market value. And I get it. I mean, if you don't believe that Hendrickson is on par with the very top guys, it's still from the agent's perspective, like it's impossible not to argue. You say my client has had 17.5 sacks for 2 straight seasons. The price is the price, and the Bengals are refusing to pay it. And so we'll see what ends up happening there if they lose their best defensive player, if they can salvage relationships. But it's going to be a tough game no matter what, just because of Joe Burrow and that offense.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be a tough out for most teams just because of the offense, like you said. And I think the problem though for the Bengals is this just going to be last year again, right? Like, does anything that they did this offseason really make anybody go, oh yeah, it's just going to be more like, 2021 or 2022? Like, I don't think so. I think the problem with this team ultimately is they made their bed with the offense, right? Like, Joe Burrow wanted these guys back, and rightfully so. But the Bengals, by doing so, have put themselves in a corner because they're not going to pay Trey Hendrickson market value. And he might just not play for them, as he said. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. He might just show up anyway, but they're either going to have to trade him or they're going to have to pay him. And I think if one of those doesn't happen and he sits out, this might be the worst defense in the NFL next year. Like, that's how bad it could get, because you take Shamar Stewart in the first round, which I understand. The talent level, all that's great. He's not going to be the guy this year. I can promise you that. Like, he's not going to be Trey Hendrickson if Hendrickson isn't around. And what are you going to get from the rest of those guys? Like, this is going to be a team that has to win games 32-28 and 35-30. Like, and against the Steelers, yes, their offense isn't very good and probably isn't going to be very good this year, but anyone can score on that Bengals team. I mean, it's just what it comes down to. I think this is a very interesting game at this point in the season when we get there, because one, what does the Steelers offense look like at this point? Like, are they actually a threat offensively at all? And if they are the Bengals going to be able to outscore them with the fact that their defense is going to be significantly worse than what the Steelers defense is, right? And the Steelers defense has given Burrow problems in the past, right? Now he's also burned them plenty of times. So like there is an element of that where it's kind of a coin flip. But realistically, our defense has a huge advantage over their offense compared to the other way around. And it's going to be a very telling game, I think, at this point for both teams.
Yeah, for sure. And in kind of like the Steelers' offense has wasted TJ Watt and Cam Hayward's career in a way. Yeah. The Bengals defense is doing that to Joe Burrow. Absolutely. I mean, Joe Burrow played at an MVP level last year, but their defense sucks so bad that they couldn't even crack the tournament and make a difference. And so obviously that's got to be disheartening for Bengals fans, knowing that your offense, you've got like just players that can be lethal on offense, but if your defense is really bad, you're not going to have a chance. And we could be heading for that as well. Either way, Shayne, you look at this game, and regardless of what week this came in, the fact that you're going to go to Cincinnati against Joe Burrow and an AFC North opponent on a short week, this is just going to be a tough game. There's no chance the Steelers will be favorites in this game, whether Aaron Rodgers signs or not. They're going to side with the home team. They're going to side with the better quarterback, which will be Burrow, regardless of who's at the helm for Pittsburgh. So you can bet the Steelers will be underdogs in that game, and one that most people will probably chalk up as a loss on the calendar this year. We'll be interested to see once all these games come in. We'll make our schedule predictions and see where we have the Steelers. It's what's hard to know though, Shayne, is can we make an accurate prediction, not entirely being sure who's going to be at quarterback for the Steelers. And even if it's Mason Rudolph, if it's Rudolph all year long, we've seen this team have that situation before back in 2019. Now they did have the number one defense back then, but James Washington ended up being their lead receiver, and they found a way to not have a losing record. And so it's just so hard to bet against this team.
I can promise you, whatever the schedule ends up being, whatever what it all shakes out when we do our schedule prediction, it's going to be a 9 or more in the win column for me. It's just until they prove otherwise. I'll find 9 wins on the schedule. I don't even know if it matters where they come at. Like it'll happen.
I've said the last couple of years now, Shayne, I'm like, the easiest bet in the world is to bet the Steelers do not come in last place in the AFC North.
Yeah.
They could very well come in third. They could come in second. They're not going to come in last place until I see it happen. At least I'm not going to bet on it happening, because they just don't do it. It's something that they don't do. And so maybe this will be the year. Maybe this will be the year that they prove us wrong. Philosophy is kind of odd, and that's definitely something that I want to talk about at some point here. It just seems like they're torn in 2 different directions right now. Maybe we can even add that in at the end of the show, depending on how fast we get through the rest of this here. But anyway, Steelers at Bengals, Thursday Night Football in Week 7. Should be an interesting probably one of the more interesting Thursday night games. Typically, the Thursday night games can be a little bit dull at times. They just don't have the.
Sometimes. Yeah, I will say Mike Tomlin's 2-9 on the road in Thursday Night Football. I believe is his record so far. If I'm not mistaken, I have to double check that. But yeah, not great. Thursday Night Football, not great for the road team.
And that's when the Browns. That was the Browns snow game last.
Yeah, I think that was. Right? Yeah, they lost that one. Yeah,
of course. Yeah. Yeah. Let's move on to the next one on the Steelers schedule leak. Official schedule leak here is Pittsburgh will be hosting the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football in Week 15. So now we're talking December football. I think it's December, right? Week 15. We're in December.
Close to, it should be, but it should be. Yeah.
Right there somewhere. So this is a win for the Steelers. I want to say it. This is a win for the Steelers. The Dolphins can't play cold weather football, and neither can Tua. And if Tua is not concussed by then, and assuming that he's the quarterback, the Steelers have a big advantage in this game. Like I would have said, like as big as advantage the Steelers have against the Seahawks, the Dolphins' advantage could have been even bigger had they played this game early in the season against Pittsburgh. Yeah. But because this is coming late in the year, because this is a home game, and you're going to get Dolphins in that cold weather situation, I mean, you're looking at the Steelers as early favorites here. I would have to assume in this game, unless just like the Dolphins blow our socks off this season.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that we know in the NFL, it's that the Dolphins, when the temperature gets cold, they can't do it. They simply don't have it. And it's partly a philosophy thing. It's partly a quarterback thing with Tua. There's a lot of reasons for it. They've built their team kind of like they play in a dome. And the thing is they don't. And it's just that they play in Miami, which is basically like having a dome weather all the time for the most part. And also having a sideline that I still can't believe is allowed to exist for the opposing team, which that's a whole other conversation. But ultimately, when this team has to go on the road, especially in tough conditions, which December in Pittsburgh certainly qualifies for that. Hopefully it is a bit of a rough day. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, but maybe a little bit of a rough day. They're going to have an uphill battle to compete just based on how they are. And you could say, well, they drafted a defensive lineman in the first round. They drafted an offensive guard in the second round. It's like, that's great. If Tua's playing quarterback, it doesn't matter much to me. Like, I hate to say that. It's weird saying that about an NFL starting quarterback, but it's just been the case for so long now that's hard to ignore.
Yeah, Shayne, and I've got a theory. And when it comes to the Dolphins and their utter lack of any prominent playoff success for decades now, I think a lot of it comes to their proximity, their location. They are in Miami, but they're also in the AFC. And so typically when the playoffs roll around, you're getting a drastic climate change. And now all of a sudden you're going from 70 degrees down there up to negative degrees. Oftentimes in the AFC, kind of like we saw with the Kansas City game. Was that 2 years ago in the playoffs?
Yeah,
it just never stood a chance.
It's never going to happen.
So it's such a climate shock for them that I think that's part of the reason why they just don't have that postseason success. That, and they just haven't been all that great. They've been missing franchise quarterbacks. That doesn't help either. So let's talk about the last one here, and then I'm going to check for updates here to make sure we didn't miss any.
I haven't seen
but week 16. All right, week 16, we've got a big game potentially. The Steelers will be on the road against the Detroit Lions, the number one team in the NFC in terms of record last year, 14-3. It actually came down, ironically, to that week 18 game where it was 2 14-3 teams playing each other. You never see that. They beat the Vikings, and the Vikings had an early exit from the playoffs, but the Lions will still be tough. Whether Ben Johnson's there or not, the Lions are still a talented team. They still got Dan Campbell, and they're going to be just a tough roster to compete against. For the Steelers, you hope that this game doesn't come with like playoff implications on the line. You'll have 2 more weeks after this, but we could already be looking at this team in critical condition where it's like you've got to win your last 3 games to crack the tournament. And the Lions, having the Lions on the schedule this late, it's like, all right, well, will this be the knife that does you in right here?
I think it's possible, right? Because this is a team we'll talk about in a little bit here that like is kind of has 1 foot in, 1 foot out this year in terms of trying to maximize the roster, which I'm not against necessarily. As everyone who watches the show knows, we're not exactly the fan of like, let's just squeeze every ounce out of the season we can and not worry about past this. Like, it's not how we operate, Tommy. But because are operating in that way this year a little bit, where it's like, we're competing, but like, we'll get rid of guys we don't really think they're going to be important in a year or 2. This is going to be a season where the last couple games is going to probably mean the difference between a playoff spot at all, going home early, a winning season maybe is, again, we talked about like until it happens, I'm not betting on it, but this is a year it could happen. Overall, like this could be one of the biggest games of the year for the Steelers, and having to go to the Lions to do so is tough. I don't care. Ben Johnson being gone, we'll see how much that matters. Aaron Glenn being gone, we'll see how much that matters. Dan Campbell is still the guy that holds everything together there. And until proven otherwise, I'm going to trust that he's going to make the right decisions with the coordinators, and everything is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt the Lions are going to take a step back in some way, shape, or form. There probably won't be a 14-3 team this year. They probably won't have a top 3 offense for the 4th year in a row. They could, though. They're still talented enough to.
It's certainly
Ben Johnson's going to hurt a little bit. Aaron Glenn could hurt a little bit. But they will still be the favorites in this game. This is a home game for the Lions. They're still projected to be maybe the 2nd best team in the NFC behind the Eagles. I mean, they're going to be up there still. Now, obviously, we've got a whole season to see how that's going to shake out, essentially, before this game gets played in December here. But this could be one where it comes down to, it's like, this is a must-win game for the Steelers, or else we could be looking at a situation where maybe Pittsburgh is out of it. Maybe this will be the first time in the Mike Tomlin era, Shayne, where the Steelers will be eliminated entering week 17 of the season. Yeah, it's possible. I don't want to speculate this early, but that's kind of what we do this time of year. I mean, there's not much else. Everybody does it. The schedule comes out, and people we like to overreact to it. So those are the leaks that we have right now. I just refreshed again. I did not see anything else. I'm gonna get one more time. Nothing at the moment right now. And if you guys have any questions, drop them into the chat here for us, and we will get to those. And then I can start moving on to the next if I don't see any questions pop in here. And in the meantime, if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers and would like to support the Steel Curtain podcast, please consider subscribing to the Steel Curtain podcast on YouTube. We appreciate all of your support. I was off last week, but I'm back and ready to grind now. And like I said, if you guys missed the show from last week, is a really good one with Shayne and Josh. Go check that out on Steel Curtain's YouTube channel. Also check out our content on steelcurtain.com. We've dropped, I don't want to say 7 or 8 articles so far this morning on the NFL schedule stuff. We're going to be doing more detailed breakdowns. After the fallout of all this, we're going to get back into the rookie class, the roster. We're going to share our thoughts as we always do. Shayne, I do want to now shift gears for a second, and let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. We're beating a dead horse, and we've done this so many times now, but it does feel like with the Steelers playing the Jets now officially in week 1 of the 2025 season, we could be seeing Aaron Rodgers finally coming to town. The Steelers have been the favorites to land Rodgers since, I want to say, February, March. They've been the runaway favorites for Rodgers to sign. The question is, we haven't heard from Rodgers. And the last time we did, he was very wishy-washy, wouldn't commit to playing football at all, and just giving us the most Rodgers responses of all time. Do you think that this is ultimately something that gets done? Like, if you had to wager on it right now, do you think Rodgers is in black and gold this year?
I think I would still lean yes that he is, but I think the issue ultimately becomes, if this drags on until, let's say, start of training camp, right? And he hasn't signed yet, but he hasn't said no. And again, maybe the Steelers already know that, like, he's going to sign this day or at this time period of days, and it's just not being announced because he doesn't want it announced yet or whatever, right? Which, why that's the case, only he could tell you that if that's the case, but I certainly don't know. But assuming that's not the case and that they just legitimately don't know for sure right now, at what point do you just say, hey, man, like, the season's starting, training camp starting, our starting quarterback is Mason Rudolph until otherwise? Like, you would have to come in and actually, like, do the work and get ready to play before you'd even have a chance to beat him out. Like, that's the mentality they need to have, because you can't ask a guy who's in his 40s, who hasn't played with any of these receivers before, assuming they don't bring in all his friends, which I don't think they're going to do, to come in and, like, just make this work over the course of a month or so. Like, I just don't think that that's the best course of action for the 2025 season, even if he obviously is a better quarterback than Mason Rudolph is still, even at his age. I don't see how that really helps you enough at that point. Like, the gap between him and Rudolph is going to get smaller the closer to the season we get, because he's not going to have the time to acclimate to the receivers in the offense. So unless he signs early enough in the process, even if he wants to sign, I don't know if the Steelers should want to do that, honestly.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And Rodgers is better than Rudolph. But like you said, Shayne, if Rudolph is the one taking all these reps, he's 29 years old, going to be 30 before the start of the season this year. I mean, that's really a quarterback's prime. He's entering the prime of his quarterback years right now, where Rodgers is well past his prime with the Achilles injury 2 years ago, coming off of a down season with the Jets where he led his team to 4 wins. And so all these factors combined, and now you've got Rodgers just sitting out, twiddling his thumbs, walking the beach with a blanket. You don't know if he's going to be in football shape, even if he does sign with the Steelers. And it's like, all right, are you better off to just go with the committed guy at this point? I think if you had to put like a deadline, like if you're the Steelers, you got to do a deadline at some point. I know that I don't know, it doesn't sound like they've given him that hard deadline, but it seems like you have to. There has to be a time where you say, Rodgers, we can't have you coming in this late. We can't have you joining the team after preseason. Like it's too late. You can't jump on a moving train and expect to make a difference. And that's the phrase that Tomlin likes to use when it comes to the other players. Maybe he'll make an exception for Rodgers, but it's too late at that point. What date would you give? Like if you were to set a hard date as the organization, what would you say?
Whenever mandatory stuff starts happening, when we're getting into mandatory mini camps and OTAs, and like once people have to show up, unless they're in breach of contract or trying to hold out or whatever, once that starts happening, that's when the real work starts. Like that's whenever Mason Rudolph's going to get all the snaps, and Howard will presumably get some snaps as the backup, and all this stuff is going to start happening. That's when you have a chance to figure all this stuff out. Like, how does Arthur Smith's offense work with him? What stuff does he want implemented to help him? How are the receivers going to work with him? And then all his weird, like, hand signals crap and, like, you got to do this on this. It's like all of that takes time. All of that takes effort that he has not really shown the willingness to put in over the past couple of years. And that's why I say, like, if he's not there for that stuff, what is the point of bringing him in? You're not maximizing what makes him valuable, which is all the intricate stuff, his ability to do stuff on the fly and like to find matchups he wants and have receivers do what he needs them to do. It's harder to do that if you're not there prepping for it. Like, so for me, it'd be when mandatory stuff starts happening, when everyone is going to be there, barring like holdouts and stuff like that, obviously. That's when you need to be here, because that's when the work really gets started and when we have a chance to get this ready to go so we can hit the ground running week one instead of backpedaling into it if you show up in August.
I agree, Shayne. I think that should be the deadline for Rodgers. Whether or not it will is a different question, but you've got to get him on board right now, because we talk about George Pickens potentially dividing the locker room.
Yeah.
How will Aaron Rodgers divide the locker room if he chooses not to show up and then all of a sudden the reins are just handed to him and he wasn't there throughout the process helping his teammates along? Like, that's just not going to sit well with the veteran leaders in the locker room. So it's got to happen. It's got to happen soon. We're running out of time here. I mean, we're talking about mandatory minicamps happening next month. Like, he's got to be there by then. And if it doesn't happen, then we're probably looking at Mason Rudolph this year, Shayne. So we've reached that discussion. Now let's talk about, should the Steelers do this and where this philosophy is headed? Because you and I have shared our thoughts on this many a time, but I want to ask you again, now that we've seen the post-draft fallout, now that things are kind of unfolding for the Steelers, are you willing to sign Aaron Rodgers to be your quarterback for this season?
No, I'm not. At this point, they've told us that, okay, we are trying to kind of retool this thing, prepare for the future a little bit. And I don't see Aaron Rodgers fitting into this other than just because, he is probably better than Mason Rudolph, right? Like, that's the only, if you're trying to look for reasons, that's really it. Like, I don't think this team is contending for anything. I don't think they really went this offseason planning to be the biggest contender they possibly can be, because I think even if they could get a little bit more for Pickens now, if they were contending, he'd be on the team right now. Like, just straight up. I don't think you trade him for a third-round pick and a pick swap if you were actually trying to be the best team you possibly could this year. Because even if I don't like the fit long-term and I wouldn't have wanted them to sign him to an extension, he's obviously better to have than not on your football team as a receiver. So, and especially when you don't have a direct replacement already on the roster for him, especially skill set wise. So to me, they're kind of doing this thing where it's like, we're not blowing it up, but we're also trying to prepare for 2026 and beyond. You get Derek Harmon in, here's a first round pick to hopefully be Cam Hayward's replacement long-term. You sign a running back, or you draft a running back that you can hopefully lean on and kind of get the ground game going under Arthur Smith and see if that can be your offensive identity. Like, they've shown us that they're trying to kind of have one foot in the door this year and one foot out the door, where sure, we want to be competitive, we want to make the playoffs, all this stuff, but if we don't, it's okay. And I think that's kind of the shift we're seeing this offseason that we haven't seen from them in previous off seasons. So
yeah, I think that's just the problem, Shayne. They've got one foot in each door, and I just don't think that that's a good philosophy overall. But I agree with you. No, I would not sign Aaron Rodgers at this point. If it didn't happen early in the offseason, And the moves that you have made are more focused on the future, which I love. I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah.
I like that you are building the trenches. I like that you are looking down the line and saying, this is what our team could be. I like the fact that you let 6 or 7 starters walk away. You're getting comp picks for them, guys who were just very average football players. And you said, no, I'm not going to wreck my comp formula by bringing in stopgap free agents who aren't going to move the needle. I like a lot of the moves that they've done, but because they've done these moves, because they traded George Pickens away, because they drafted a uber raw Derek Harmon, who knows how big his role is going to be from the gate and playing the opposite side of the football. Like, you could have done things to prep this team for at least a playoff push. I don't think they would have gotten far with Rodgers here or any possible combination of moves that you could have made. I think that you're looking at 1 to maybe 2 playoff wins, and I think that that's really stretching it. But I think their moves indicate that this team is a little bit more focused on the future maybe than they ever were under Kevin Colbert, which again, I like. But if that's the case, then Shayne, why bring in Aaron Rodgers, who turns 42 years old this season, coming off a down year, who led his team to no success last season with the Jets? It just doesn't make sense. And if you're asking me my opinion, and I'm not afraid to put it out there. You come at me, you disagree with me if you want to. Here's what I would do if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you disagree, put it in the chat. I don't care. I would play Will Howard all freaking season long.
There we go.
I would start him from week 1. And I am not even a Will Howard fan. I'm just saying I would play Will Howard all year long. If the Steelers suck, you get a top pick and you have got amazing draft capital next year. 1st, 2nd, 3 thirds, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, 2 sixths. You've got loads of capital. You can turn this franchise around fast. And one of those picks undoubtedly would go to the quarterback position. If you play Will Howard all year long, and maybe he's Brock Purdy, maybe he's one of those guys, because he certainly is a whiteboard guy. I mean, the guy's smart. I mean, you watch him with John Gruden, he knows what he's doing out there. If he can overcome his lack of average arm talent, maybe in a Brock Purdy-esque way, maybe you have something there. I don't think you do. I think the chances are very small. We're going against all odds here. It's like Purdy and Prescott, and there's very few guys that are these day 3 quarterbacks that turn out to be franchise quarterbacks. But am I wrong in saying, Shayne, that this is the best philosophy for the future? It's not for 2025. I admit that. But for the future, is that the best play?
Yeah, it's the best play. I mean, first of all, with Rudolph might get you kind of there too, depending on how he plays. But either way, like I understand the sentiment though, because Will Howard is a 6th-round pick for a reason, even though I do think he was probably more of a 4th-round pick grade, in my opinion. A guy that like could stick around as a backup, has traits to at least be an NFL player. Not sure if the accuracy is good enough. Not sure if the decision-making is good enough at times. However, if you throw him out there all year and he ends up being really good, then cool. You just found a 6th-round pick that might be a viable starter, more viable than you were able to get out of your 1st-round pick a couple of years ago, weirdly enough, if that's what happens in that situation. Or again, like you bought him out and you get a quarterback next year, hopefully, that is a much better prospect than you've had available to you in a long time. And you kind of build things from there, right? Because the roster won't change just because you play Will Howard. Like the rest of the roster will still be intact. If you just have a top 8 pick or so because he's terrible, so what? Who really cares? Steelers is the problem. That's why it won't happen, because the Steelers care. But I think that idea is ultimately what this team needs, because they have not shown the ability to find the quarterback answer outside of the draft. So if they're not going to find it outside of the draft, you have to have a high enough pick to take the swing in the draft. Guess what they never have? A high enough draft pick. We know, we've talked about this plenty of times. They are this weird range where like they can't find a solidified answer elsewhere, but they also can't pick high enough in the draft to ever take one that's actually a viable starting quarterback. Something has to give at some point in that regard. So why not be this year? So,
yeah, no, 100%. And people will take a clip of me saying this and say, well, you don't care about the Steelers. You want them to lose, whatever.
Right. It's like,
no, I do care about the Steelers. I care about the state of their future.
Right.
And I think I really think the best thing for that is you'll find out if Will Howard sucks. It's probably in the best case scenario for the organization, because it means you won't have to package multiple 1st-round picks to move up and get a quarterback. If Aaron Rodgers plays this year, fans are going to have a false hope that this team is going to go far into the playoffs because his name is Aaron Rodgers, even though he's not the same player anymore. He's going to do just enough to get you to 9, 10, maybe 11 wins, maybe 11 wins in a really, really good comeback season from Rodgers. Maybe you snap the playoff streak. I don't care about snapping the playoff streak. I want to build a Super Bowl roster. That's how my mindset works, Shayne. And to me, snapping the playoff streak is almost detrimental because now you're looking at pick 25-ish in the draft. And you want to talk about not getting a quarterback next year. It's when you're picking 25. This team, even with Omar Khan showing more aggressiveness than Colbert, I severely doubt he's going to be willing to trade 3 first-round picks to go up and get the quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the class. He might move up a little bit for a quarterback, but I've got the future of the team in mind. I'm concerned about the next decade of Steelers football, not 2025 season where you've got a 36, soon to be 36-year-old Cam Hayward, where Watt's going to be 31. And I feel bad for those guys. I want them to have postseason success, but that ship may have already sailed in terms of legitimate playoff pushes. Like, I just don't know if that's happening at this point, Shayne.
Yeah, and like, to me, at the end of the day, unless you were willing to pony up more than the Raiders were willing to give up for Geno Smith, as soon as they didn't get a quarterback of his level in the offseason, they can't worry about this year anymore. And I hate that, people will say Geno Smith. It's like Geno Smith is like kind of the as far as tier of quarterbacks where, like, if your rosters were really good, he can get you pretty far in the playoffs. In my opinion, I think he could. Everyone below him, basically, though, on the totem pole probably isn't even with a really good roster. So because they didn't take a swing on that and like do the double dip of let's get Metcalf and Smith, which should have been a hilarious trade, by the way. But had they done that, then I could be like, all right, we can try to go in for this year because you have a dude who at least is capable of the level of play that's required to make a deep playoff push. They don't have that. They're not going to get that with Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. They're not getting in with Mason Rudolph. They're not getting with any of these guys. If you're going to maybe be in the middle of the pack anyway, you might as well throw out the rookie and see if he's good enough to take you farther than that. And if he isn't, he'll probably play you into a top 10 pick. If you're just playing the odds on that, that would be better for the long-term health of the franchise. It might make next year not so fun to watch at times, but also it kind of might be fun sometimes, to be honest with you. It still might be fun.
Well, looking ahead to that draft capital, especially too. I mean, if we look at it big picture with our big picture goggles on, I think that would be a lot to get excited about having that one down season. I mean, this team has not had that losing record since 2003, I think was the last time that they had it. So it's been forever. And sometimes you almost need that down year to have that reset. Some people will say, oh, it's not necessary. I think the Steelers are a perfect example of why it is necessary, because they're doing just enough to keep their head above water every year, even though we know this team has not even felt like they've remotely had a chance to compete in the playoffs since 2017. That was the last year that I felt like this team might be able to do something. Since then, never did I feel like this team is going to go far, and they haven't. They've been massacred in the playoffs during that span. And even their last 3 playoff wins have been, I mean, just not a good situation at all, Shayne. And so that's why I think that we said this right after the season is like, you either need to go all in or you need to be all out, and you need to be all about the future. Because if you go all in, I can almost make sense of what you're doing here with an old Watt and old Hayward. Make it happen right now. Their moves have not been the go all in moves. They've been more of rebuilding the future moves. And so guess what? It's time to take that next step forward. Did you have a chat for us here?
Just that we got our friend R Barley 18, of course, as always. Doesn't dislike what we're saying, but you know damn well that Tomlin's never going to have never having losing season BS is important. Yes, it probably is. Again, it's one of those things where, like, yes, is it impressive that he's been able to do this? Yes. The problem is it doesn't matter at all, really, at the end of the day. Like, if in the grand scheme of things, all it is like, man, Mike Tomlin's like the highest floor coach in NFL history. That's great. Show me the ceiling, right? At some point, the ceiling's got to show up too. You know, great to have a nice floor. If you look up and there's nothing there for you to look at, not great. I don't really think you care too much about how good your floor looks at that point. It's just they have to do something else than what they've been doing. And I think Omar Khan knows that, and I think this offseason is indicative of that. It's just how close can they get to like the range to go up and get maybe the best quarterback or the second or third best quarterback in next year's class. Because if you watch our show that I had with Josh last week, there are some guys here that have the talent level to be first-round picks, several of them, right? And it doesn't mean all of them are going to be first-round picks. It doesn't mean all of them are going to show up and come out next year. But there's legitimate prospects in next year's class. Maybe not quite the 2023 class or the 2023 class where you have, 2024, I guess, with all the guys last year. Maybe not 6 guys in the first round. Mm-hmm. Maybe not anything crazy like that, but there's guys that at least could get you there and have you in a place where your quarterback is not the problem, like it's been for the Steelers for a long time. Like, you have to be in play for one of those guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And Shayne, I will say this, and I want to preface with 2026 mock drafts. Don't read too much into them. Much is going to change. But for what it's worth, Sports Illustrated released one yesterday. They had 6 quarterbacks going in the top 11 picks of the draft, and they had Steelers picking 16. If the quarterback class ends up being good and the Steelers are average, they will once again miss out on the crop of quarterbacks unless you're willing to package and mortgage your future to go up and get one. And that's why I'm saying, if you are willing to bite the bullet and say, this one year, just this one time, I'm only going to do it once, we're going to have that bad season. And heck, maybe you miss on the quarterback that you draft, but you're going to have so many picks around you. And like I said, the second, the 3/3, all that stuff that you have to build that roster and to get starting level football players. Maybe you could build your roster like the Eagles. Maybe all you would need at that point is your version of a Jalen Hurts, someone who can run your offense. You don't necessarily have to have an elite quarterback. That might be enough. Heck, we got Andy Weidel in here who helped do that for Philadelphia. Yeah. He can probably do it for Pittsburgh, and they've at least been building from the trenches. They've been building the studs up, which is the right mentality these past 3 years, even if all these guys don't end up hitting. I like the direction the front office is going. It's just everybody's got to get on board with that. Rooney's got to get on board with that. Tomlin's got to get on board with that. Otherwise, we are heading towards another 9-8 season, and we're looking at a draft next year where Steelers are probably going to wind up with the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the class.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, this is part of the problem with the Tomlin conversation, because we had this following the season. We talked about, would it be the right time to move off of him, all this stuff. I just don't know if Mike Tomlin is capable of having a bad football season. I don't know what would have to happen, because ever since the 2019 season, whenever he didn't lose like 11 games with that team, I think everyone kind of looked at each other like, is he able to lose 9 games? Like, is it possible for him to do it? I don't know if it is. And I know it sounds weird to say, but like, we're going on like 19 years of this thing. Like, at some point, you have to ask yourself, is there a team that the Steelers can form that is bad enough that he can't win 8 or 9 games with them? I don't know if it is. Like, even if Will Howard starts every game this year, are we going to really – like, if they told us before we did our schedule or our win-loss prediction that Will Howard's going to start every game this year if he's healthy, would we pick them to lose 9 games? I don't know if I would. Like, that's the problem with this whole thing, is he is such a just floor raiser as a head coach that I don't know if we're capable of losing enough games regardless of what we do. It's really a weird situation. Yeah. It's one of the most unique situations in sports where, like, your team, how good your team is almost doesn't matter that much, because they're never bad enough or good enough for it to change from that like 9 to 11 range. And we're just always in that kind of tier of team. It's very, very weird to deal with.
100%, Shayne. And people made the argument, well, if you fire Tomlin, he's going to get snatched up right away.
Good.
And that's 100% true.
I know the team probably needs him. We might not
and
anymore.
He would raise another team's floor. But for Steelers, I genuinely think that Steelers fans are the only ones that truly get it at this point, because now we've had 2 decades of watching this team do just enough. And I mean, obviously early on, Tomlin's career was fantastic. The last 13 years, there's been almost zero playoff success, and it came against
Dolphins, I think, with Matt Moore.
Yeah, it was Matt Moore, it was AJ McCarron, and it was Alex Smith. Those are the 3 quarterbacks that they've beaten the last 13 years in the playoffs. Yeah. And every other game they've gotten massacred in the playoffs, and it's just not a recipe for success. They're just not building a Super Bowl caliber team. And so I do think at some point that's going to have to change. We're going to have a full reset here. But going all this to say, based on the offseason moves the Steelers have made in 2025, I do not believe this team did enough to make themselves a relevant Super Bowl contender. And because of that, even with Aaron Rodgers, even if Aaron Rodgers comes, I just don't think it gets you anywhere further than maybe a wild card win this year. And because of that, I would be way more apt to focus on the future than a naive chance to try to make a deep Super Bowl run right now. That's where I am, Shayne.
Yeah, me too. Again, Rodgers, he can either retire, I don't know, maybe the Saints will ask him to play for them now that they have nobody except for Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler and whatever else.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole other situation. That's funny. But yeah, unless he just doesn't want to play for anybody else and they don't want him, he can just retire. I think it's time, regardless, honestly, for him to retire. Just go on and do whatever it is he wants to be doing anyway. Just probably keep doing whatever it is he's doing now anyway. But yeah, I think that would be the best thing for the franchise.
Well, we'll keep our eyes on that whole situation, because if something does happen, we would expect it to happen absolutely in the next couple of weeks here. And if it doesn't, it's like, what are Steelers doing if it doesn't happen before the mandatory mini camps start happening? Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll obviously follow all the scheduled news. So if you want to jump over to stillcurtain.com after this, you can follow all the stuff tonight, tomorrow morning, throughout the weekend, whatever, of every bit of scheduled news that is dropping out here. We will be back on the show next week. Josh will be on his show on Monday. And so we go live on YouTube every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. Check out Josh York's show live on Mondays at 1:30 p.m. Thanks for joining us on the show today. You can follow Shayne on X at Shayne Kubas. You can follow me on X at Tommy Jaggi. You can download the Still Curtain podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Also check us out on YouTube or ask Alexa to play the Still Curtain Steelers podcast. And thanks again for listening to the Still Curtain podcast.